Poppy Playtime as a series can be very confusing. There's so much lore and unknown questions, so I thought it might be helpful to go over everything we do know. In the game, there are two primary ways that we get lore. The first is through hidden notes, and the second is through VHS tapes. So stick with me, and hopefully you'll learn a thing or two about the game's lore that was not so obvious.
His name is Huggy. Huggy Wuggy, when he hugs you, he'll never stop.
The only note in Chapter 1 is called Find the Flower, and it serves as an introduction to the plot, basically serving as an incentive for the player to go back to Playtime Company by stating that although everyone thinks the staff disappeared 10 years ago, they're still here, and to find them they will have to find the flower. The first VHS tape is called Leith Pierre Closing. It shows us Leith Pierre is the owner of Playtime Company, and he says, by watching this tape we are trespassing, as he plays it on loop every time. He closes the factory, however it slowly starts to get increasingly threatening, and eventually we're warned about their less tame aspects of security. Players would soon realise he was referring to Huggy Wuggy. The second VHS tape is called Grab Pack Training, and it serves as an introduction to the core mechanic of the game. Throughout each new chapter, this mechanic will evolve with each grab pack. Each of them are vital for getting through various puzzles and enemies that we see throughout our time playing. The only grab pack hands we get in Chapter 1 are very basic, just acting as essentially a keycard with no real unique mechanic to speak of. The third VHS tape is called Security Camera, Rich plus Avery, and it shows the poor working conditions that Playtime Co. has, explaining that the management team has mistreated the employees by being on our backs. He then calms down, explaining that he knows it's for a good cause and for the orphans, but says that he wished there was less boxes. The fourth VHS tape is called Stella Graber Interview, and it shows Playtime Company interviewing Stella about why she wants to help create toys and work at the company. And Stella has a normal response, explaining that she loved playing with toys when she was younger, and that she feels like she would now like to share that joy with other kids. However, she then starts talking about aging bodies and how the body can't stay young forever, hinting that she will play a bigger role in Playtime Co. later on. The fifth VHS tape is called Final Log, and it sets up the main villain of the franchise, the Prototype. Although currently we only know of him as Experiment 1006, in the VHS tape we see and hear that he has gone missing, and because of this they cannot continue with the other experiments. It ends with him being killed by one of the experiments, but he does say one breakthrough and I'll be back, implying that these experiments might have the potential to resurrect people.
Look, it's Mommy Longlegs, the coolest toy around. You can stretch your legs or hang her upside down.
The first note in Chapter 2 is called Experiment 814, and it shows Elliot Ludwig experimenting on a rat. After 2 weeks of feeding it, the rat was killed and submerged in a mixture of poppy gel. Elliot Ludwig ends the note by stating, perhaps something bigger would yield a different result, as the original result was unsuccessful. The second note in Chapter 2 is called Assessment Form S-Able, and it shows the results of how Michaela Hyssop performed during her time in the game station tests. Looking at her results, we can see that she got a 3 in musical memory, a 5 in Whack-A-Wuggy, but only got a 1 in statues. We can also see her assigned toy was Candy Cat. The third note in Chapter 2 is called Assessment Form M-Lata, and it shows the results of how Michaela Hyssop performed during her second time during the game station tests. Looking at her results, we can see that she got a 4 in musical memory, a 3 in Whack-A-Wuggy, but only got a 4 in statues. We can also see her assigned toy has not changed and is still Candy Cat. The fourth note in Chapter 2 is called Transfer Request, and it shows us more information about Mommy Longlegs. We learn that her experiment number is 1222, and the subject used was Marie Payne. The note also says that whilst she's very hostile towards staff, she acts warm and motherly to the other experiments. The note ends by saying that she would be perfect for helping the kids in the game station. The fifth note in Chapter 2 is called Warrenbach Construction, and it shows Edward Ritterman constructing a secret underground lab. Edward can offer $100,000 for the secrecy and can pay for the equipment needed. The note ends with Playtime Company saying that they would prefer for the lab to be built in 12 months, but negotiations can be made. The sixth note in Chapter 2 is called Formal Request Form, and it shows Matthew Wason explaining why he thinks that artificial windows should be added to the game station. He explains that the kids are getting rowdy. He ends the note by explaining that some natural light and life will help the kids get in the right headspace for the games. The seventh note in Chapter 2 is called Employee Instructions, and it shows the list of directions that the employees of Playtime Company should take when directing the kids through the game station. It starts with the kids arriving on the train, then they play each of the 3 games in order: musical memory, whack-a-wuggy, statues, then record each kid's performance. The note ends by saying for the employee to give the reports to Stella Graber. The first VHS tape in Chapter 2 is called Elliot Ludwig Biography. It shows us Elliot Ludwig's past and how he was the original creator of Playtime Company. The tape says that whilst he was divorced, he was a family man at heart, and above all else focused on bringing amazing toys to amazing children. The tape ends by saying that a family death brought him to his lowest, but despite this he came out on top. The second VHS tape in Chapter 2 is called Green Hand Tutorial. It shows the player how to use the green hand and its electricity mechanic. First it says that you can fire at power outlets to temporarily hold electricity for 10 seconds. It says after 10 seconds it can run out, and finally that you can shoot at other outlets to power other systems. The third VHS tape in Chapter 2 is called Security Camera Rich. It shows Rich getting demoted to the island of misfit toys. After Playtime Company hears his complaints of the company, the tape ends with him breaking an object out of his anger and questioning why he talks to himself. The fourth VHS tape in Chapter 2 is called Marcus Brickley Reprimanding. It shows an employee, Marcus Brickley Guest, starred as Jacksepticeye, describing that he saw a monster with 1,000 legs whilst trying to grab his wallet that he forgot. It's now been confirmed that the monster that Marcus was describing was PJ Pugapilla. The fifth VHS tape in Chapter 2 is called Jimmy Roth Interview. It shows us Jimmy Roth's technique for marketing Playtime Company toys. He says that he adds an E sound and adds it onto the toys' names Huggy and Mommy. The tape ends by him saying that blue is the most popular colour and that Playtime Company should not be known for toys but marketing. The sixth VHS tape in Chapter 2 is called PSA Big Spider. It shows us that the Playtime Company employees have been complaining about a very, very big spider, and that Playtime Company have used the excuse of "we would already be dead anyways." The tape ends by the person recording saying that Playtime Company are sending specialists down to have a look whilst reminding people to do their jobs and stop complaining. The seventh VHS tape in Chapter 2 is called Logo 8502. It shows us the prototype who managed to make a laser pointer and disable it, allowing him brief time to escape his room and kill an employee by hiding in one of the camera's blind spots. The tape ends by saying that the prototype is very smart and violent, and that they will have to keep this in mind for future experiments and suppress them.
SMILE every day!
The first note in Chapter 3 is called Note 1, and it shows after the hour of joy it's very silent in the school, with even small noises from the other teachers startling each other. The note ends by saying that something has locked the door and they haven't been able to open it since. The second note in Chapter 3 is called Note 2, and it shows that after Miss Delight hears breathing through a knocking door, she goes to call it, but it doesn't respond. After hours it went silent, and she wondered if this is the thing that locked her and the others up. The note ends by saying that she's made a weapon full of pencils and rulers called Barb to protect herself with in case the door opens. The third note in Chapter 3 is called Note 3, and it shows that after a lack of food, everyone trapped in the school has started arguing about what's left. The note ends by saying that because the others have blocked the kitchen hallway with their bodies, she thinks they have singled her out to die first. The fourth note in Chapter 3 is called Note 4, and it shows that Mr. Light has gone insane from the lack of food. She's grown weak and has fully lost her sanity, explaining that her weapon called Barb is now speaking to her and gives her strength. The note ends by her saying that if she stays still, the others will think she's dead, and implies that if she does this, she can eat the others' bodies. The fifth note in Chapter 3 is called Note 5, and it shows that Mr. Light has eaten the others to survive, whilst trying to rationalize it on writing, saying, "I had to." The sixth note in Chapter 3 is called Note 6, and it shows that after the door opened in the hall, Mr. Light found Catnap and figured out it was he who locked the door. Although she wanted to kill him, she knew she couldn't, and so they made a deal that Catnap would protect her in exchange for reporting everything to the prototype. The first VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Claire Harper Debrief. It shows Claire Harper's scientist asking her to explain the situation. She explains that all the kids were going to sleep for the night, and Catnap had the red sleeping gas in the room. Then one of the kids called Marie screamed and had a very violent nightmare. Claire Harper's scientist then asked if Marie described what she saw, and she says that Marie saw a colourless monster. The VHS tape ends by Claire Harper's scientist explaining that she doesn't think it's a good idea to see Marie. She yells no and gets upset. The second VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Grab Pack 2.0 Prototype. It shows the player how to use the purple hand and its air jet mechanic. It says that the new 2.0 version of the Grab Pack has installed air jets to help break your fall, but some areas are dangerous, so you need to be careful. The third VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Welcome to Playtime. It initially shows an introductory greeting from the company, saying what new employees can expect working in Playtime Company. However, the person on the tape then starts directly talking to the player, saying that if we should return, the experiments would hunt us down, eager to help feed themselves. The fourth VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Number 1322 Report Void. It shows a scientist talking about pulling a boy from Home Sweet Home, but is interrupted by another boy called Joseph. He asks what the scientist is doing with his friend, and the scientist lies saying that he is sick and needs to get rest, using it as an excuse to get Joseph to go back to sleep. The fifth VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Samuel Lee's Last Day. It shows Ms. Brooks announcing that Samuel has been chosen by Dr. White to leave. The kids not knowing that being chosen mean that you're going to be experimented on. Cheer for Samuel and say goodbye to him. The sixth VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Illegible Writing. It shows Mr. Light asking Catnap about the state of the kids, and whilst it seems like she has good intentions, the VHS tape quickly shows the reason she wanted to know, and it's because she wanted to kill them, with Catnap saying no to try and protect them. The seventh VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Stuart and Rich. It shows Rich getting annoyed with the state of Playtime Company, saying the kids deserve real sunlight and that they don't even get to see them. He then apologizes and says that he's trying to control his temper better. Stuart says that he's always liked his honesty and is considering promoting him after he retires. Rich is very happy and says that he's glad that not everyone has it out for him. The eighth VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Catnap Check-In. It shows an interview checkup between Leith Pierre and Catnap. Leith Pierre starts off by saying that Catnap is very useful with his red smoke, but when Catnap doesn't respond, he asks if his voice box is still broken, but then Catnap says the prototype will save us. Leith Pierre gets mad and says that this is his life now and to get used to it. The ninth VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called August 8th, 1995 Emergency Alert. It shows that an unknown hostile force has entered the building and the security measures the Playtime Company staff should do to stay safe. The VHS tape then shows, "Open the doors now. The hour of joy has arrived," as the alarm sirens continue to go off. The 10th VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Hartman Incident. It shows an interview between Stella Graber and Mr./Mrs. Hartman, who want to adopt a boy called Jeremy. But when Stella looks at the form, she says that there's been some complications and that it says testing, the parents get mad and demand to know more, but Stella doesn't know how to respond. The 11th VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called Log 24459. It shows the prototype and Harley Sawyer talking. The prototype asks if Harley Sawyer feels anything when abusing the experiments, and Harley explains that there's something very valuable inside of the prototype and he's getting close to finding it. He ends by saying that he learns something new about the prototype every day, and the prototype responds saying that he does too whilst mimicking his voice. The 12th VHS tape in Chapter 3 is called The Hour of Joy. It shows what happened and why everyone else is gone. The VHS tape shows the day where all the experiments revolted, killing not just the guilty but the innocent too, and after they consumed their bodies to survive. And with that, we've finally reached the end of our journey here today. If I got anything wrong, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Fan discussion is always welcome, just make sure to keep it civil. Thank you all for watching, and remember, keep theorizing, keep discussing, and keep having fun.